You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with Kevin Schofield, political editor at the HuffPost UK, and Noah Hoffman, political reporter for The Sun. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the Metro leads with the row between the BBC and Gary Lineker, with the headline, Lineker muzzled for now. BBC executives are scrambling to repair relations with the former England captain, according to The Guardian, to prevent a staff mutiny at the corporation. The Telegraph says the BBC will climb down and allow Gary Lineker to return as Match of the Day host next Saturday. That's also in the Mail. Their headline, will BBC do Lineker deal today to end TV standoff? And The Times, BBC bosses seek truce to get Lineker back on side. And The Star is warning a new polar blast could bring a white Easter. The paper says it's time to ask the Easter Bunny, for a chalk ice. OK. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Kevin Schofield, the political editor at HuffPost UK, and Noah Hoffman, political reporter at The Sun. Welcome to you both. Let's start with the Daily Mail and their headline, will BBC do Lineker deal today to end the TV standoff? This comes off the back of those close to him saying that the matter is likely to be resolved to Gary Lineker's to his liking, shall we say, on Monday. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, all the indications seem to be that they are going to have to climb down the BBC. That's seemed to be on the cards ever since all the sports coverage over the weekend has been completely thrown into chaos by BBC colleagues of Gary Lineker refusing to take part after he was pulled from Match of the Day late on Friday. It's a pretty big humiliation, really, for the BBC. It's hard to imagine how this could have gone any worse for them. We had the ridiculous scene last night of Match of the Day being only on for 20 minutes, no theme music, no commentators, no pundits, no presenter. It was just farcical, really, and something had to be done. And we all wait, really, to find out exactly what Gary Lineker's deal is with the BBC, how they've managed to compromise on the situation. But yeah, it's been a fairly humiliating experience for the BBC. It's been badly handled by them from the very beginning, and Gary Lineker, it looks as though has come out on top. I think it's proving that that they need him certainly more than he needs them.
Noah, the Mail is saying that a BBC spokesman is quoted saying, we are working hard on a resolution and hope to have him back with us as soon as possible. So it looks as if we are coming to the end of this story, do you think?
I hope so. I mean, I think nobody is enjoying this. It shouldn't really have happened in the first place. Gary has previously tweeted political opinions, and so that should have been something the BBC had thought about and clarified with him as to which direction he should go, whether he should quieten down or whether he has free rein to speak his mind a while ago. I think there's sort of two kind of solutions to this issue, which really boils down to the social media policy for BBC staff and freelancers just not being clear or consistent enough when it comes to non-news and current affairs roles. Either they should sort of have a blanket policy where any presenter in arts, in sport, in entertainment there's a blanket policy, no political opinions on social media whatsoever, or they say you can give political opinions if you're not in news and current affairs, but then that policy has to apply consistently, whether that's to Lord Alan Sugar, who also tweets political opinions, as well as Gary Lineker. So it just really boils down to being consistent and clear, and hopefully that's what tomorrow will achieve.
The Metro headline suggesting that Gary Lineker has been muzzled, but only for now. And that's the issue, isn't it, Kevin? Whether he is going to be allowed to continue putting his thoughts on Twitter, or perhaps will there be a rewriting of the BBC guidelines on impartiality?
Yeah, and I think Noah's right. There does have to be greater clarity. I think there's an awful lot of grey areas around the BBC's social media usage policy. I mean, obviously, this isn't the first time that Gary Lineker has tweeted political opinions. He's very vocal on Brexit, for instance, and no one is in any doubt where he stands on that particular debate. So, yeah, he has up until now always just tweeted his mind. I saw an interview from a couple of years ago with him that was shown again on Twitter a couple of days ago, which shows that he's very thoughtful, I think, about what he tweets. He doesn't tweet when he's been drinking. He says he doesn't tweet when he's angry, and he thinks about everything that he tweets. And if he's in any doubt at all, he doesn't hit send. So, he does think these things through, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not he has agreed to some sort of toning down of his presence on social media. But I'd be very surprised if he was willing to accept that. And as I said earlier, he doesn't need the BBC as much as they need him. He could very well get work as a broadcaster elsewhere. So it may well be that he's had to agree to some sort of compromise over his social media usage. But as I say, I think that the BBC are the ones who are in the weak position here. They're desperate to get him back on the TV, desperate to get Alan Shearer, Ian Wright, Alex Scott, all the people who have refused to work while Gary Lineker's been suspended. They want them back as quickly as possible as well, and to put this whole mess behind them.
I know it does, from what we've seen thus far, seem as if it will be the BBC that climbs down, because we know that Gary Lineker refused to apologise for the tweet, and seemingly he'll want to continue his presence on Twitter and sharing his views with the public.
Yeah, he's made that very clear, and it does seem to be heading in that direction where the BBC will be perhaps the ones to step back and say, OK, we've gone too far. We just don't know yet. But if that is the case, if it is the BBC who takes that step back, you can expect a lot of anger from Tory MPs, from the Tory backbenchers. Obviously not everyone, but the view among a lot of the Tory party is that anyone who's receiving taxpayer funds, whether that's, an $1 million plus salary as Gary has, or anyone else, if you're in receipt of taxpayer money, you should not be expressing a political opinion. So I don't think Tory backbenchers will take it lightly if it is the BBC to step down in this case.
Kevin, that's an interesting point. What do you think about all of those Conservative MPs who were calling for some action to be taken against Gary Lineker?
Oh, yeah. There was a few of them were very vocal, were sort of strangely saying that they preferred Match of the Day last night without Gary Lineker on it. I'm not sure that's true, actually. I think it was a little bit performative. But yeah, I think Noah's absolutely bang on there. I think there will be... Conservative MPs will be very angry that the BBC is apparently going to climb down and let Gary Lineker back on the TV. They don't agree with his politics, and they don't like to see him tweeting about it while he's employed by the BBC. So yeah, I'm sure there will be a bit of a political backlash. So the BBC, they've had to weigh it up. What's worse, getting a bit of a kicking from a few Tory MPs, or not being able to have Match of the Day back on as normal next Saturday night? I think that's a bit of an easy choice to make, really.
Yeah, let's move away from Gary Lineker and the BBC to the Daily Telegraph and this story about Rishi Sunak announcing £5 billion, an increase in military spending to, quote, fortify our national defences. This has been perhaps a long time coming, and something that we've certainly heard those senior in the military calling for. Noah?
Yeah, that's right. So tomorrow we will have the publication of the integrated review refresh, which will sort of set out what position the UK is in terms of how well-resourced the military is, what threats the UK is currently facing, and what sort of short, medium and long-term future planning needs to take place, and funds needs to be given to the Ministry of Defence in order to secure our national security, to secure our borders. So the MOD has said they will be giving an extra £5 billion to the ministry. The government will be giving the Ministry of Defence an extra £5 billion Now, the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, has previously stated he wants £11 billion. He has said he's delighted with this latest round of funding, but I think Rishi Sunak tomorrow will have to really explain to reporters, as he's in San Diego, to talk about the military, to talk about the Ukraine war, why £5 billion is enough, why he isn't going that extra length. And I know he'll say, you know, we don't have unlimited money, but why he isn't taking that extra step to give the £11 billion that Ben Wallace has asked for in the past. Are we safe enough with just that £5 billion? Will that be enough to replenish the military, which is really running low on resources because of the war in Ukraine? And rightly so, we've been helping out, providing equipment there, but that needs to be replenished. We're in a very insecure landscape with the rise of China, again with Putin's antics as well. So he'll have a lot of explaining to do as to why that's that figure.
And Kevin, we read that the Prime Minister will also pledge to boost military funding to 2.5% of GDP. That's significantly less, though, than the 3% raise promised by Liz Truss.
Yeah, I mean, that was another one of Liz Truss's big promises, along with all the tax cuts that she was going to introduce. And we know how that turned out. It was never actually fleshed out exactly where that money would come from. At the moment, we spend around about 2%, so gone up to 2.5% in due course. I noticed that doesn't even have a deadline on it either, but that's an ambition. I think that's probably a more realistic one than the 3% that Liz Truss demanded. But again, that could potentially be storing up a little bit of trouble for Rishi Sunak, because Liz Truss, as we know, hasn't gone away. You know, she's quite keen, I think, to be vocal on issues which are close to her heart, and one of them is certainly defence spending. So it'll be interesting to see if she decides to say anything about this. But yeah, and also be interesting, I think, to see what Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, whether or not he bides his time for now at this £5 billion rather than £11 billion that he was looking for, and maybe keeps his powder dry, if you'll pardon the pun, for the next spending round. Maybe not for this budget, but this time next year. OK, let's
stay with politics of a sort. This is the Prime Minister. Well, basically the power grid has had to be upgraded to facilitate his new heated private pool. Noah.
Yeah, so interesting story in The Guardian. The story does make very clear that the upgrades needed to the power grid to facilitate his heated swimming pool were all paid for by him. No taxpayers' money went into this. And similarly, the article makes very clear that the Prime Minister did not use his position to receive any sort of preferential treatment to facilitate the warming of his swimming pool. But, you know, in politics, a lot of things come down to optics. So, you know, when people are struggling with energy bills, when, you know, people are choosing between heating their home and feeding their families, I don't know, this perhaps might not be the best look. And I think a lot of it boils back down to that age-old question of, is Rishi Sunak too rich to be Prime Minister? I mean, I think that in Britain, we don't punish people for being aspirational, for wanting to build wealth and having the freedom to choose how they spend it. But the important detail, I think, in this story is that it wasn't taxpayers' money that funded this upgrade. If it was, that would be a scandal, and rightly there would be a lot of outrage.
No, absolutely. This is obviously privately funded, but the optics, as Noah was saying, Kevin, don't look great when people can't heat their homes, and the Prime Minister is heating his pool.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty remarkable story. I think it'll find its way onto a few Labour election leaflets, I think, as we approach the next general election. The idea that in the middle of a cost of living crisis and with people struggling to pay their energy bills, the Prime Minister is having to install, basically taking extra electricity to heat his massive private swimming pool. I mean, I do take on board, you know, he is paying for it himself, as he should, but I just think it looks bad at a time when the government is very keen to show that, or to convince people that they are in touch with the ordinary man in the street. There aren't very many men or women in the street, I think, who have to worry about heating their own private swimming pools.
Indeed. Kevin and Noah for the moment, thank you. Do stay with us. But coming up on the front page of The Times, the Treasury scrambles to protect tech firms after bank collapse. More on that when we come back. Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, political journalist Kevin Schofield and Noah Hoffman. Welcome to you again. Let's have a look at the Telegraph and this story on the front page. Government allays fears of financial crisis. Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt tried to ease fears of a new financial crisis last night after British startups were left on the brink from the first bank collapse since 2008. Take us into this story, Kevin.
Yeah, so this is to do with this Silicon Valley Bank in America, which has collapsed. Now, the government here is very eager to insist that there's going to be very little contagion, very little knock-on effect in this country, and that they're all over it, and that the Bank of England is in control and the Treasury is keeping a very close eye on it, and things are going to be fine. But if you read the story in the Times, you know, there's still something like 3,000 British tech companies have deposits of around £7 billion in a UK subsidiary of the bank. So that's obviously a lot of money. There's concerns that these companies won't be able to meet payroll, pay their bills as well, and they are going to need some form of bailout effectively from the government to help them through this crisis until they hope anyway that the subsidiary in the UK is maybe bought out by another bank to get things back on an even keel. But yeah, obviously it brings back horrible memories of 2008 and the knock-on effect of Lehman's and what happened over the other side of the Atlantic. Obviously it came over here and caused the financial crash in the UK as well. So tomorrow morning I think it's going to be very interesting. We'll see how the stock market opens. I'm sure Jeremy Hunt will be keeping an eye on that. It's not the greatest build-up for him ahead of Wednesday's budget, but they'll be keeping their fingers crossed that any, as I say, contagion in this country is kept to an absolute minimum, because they certainly don't want a repeat of what happened back in 2008.
Yeah, no, it's perhaps not a bank that many have heard of, Silicon Valley Bank, but apparently it's home to scores of UK-based in the tech business.
Yeah, and I think that's significant because over not just the past few weeks, but sort of the past few months, even from when Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, he's really been championing the idea of UK being, you know, a startup nation, a place where investors want to go to, you know, invest in the next unicorn, where all the best brains in tech and app development in that whole field come. So to have this affect the UK is not ideal for them. Again, as Kevin said, ahead of the budget as well. But Jeremy Hunt and Treasury sources have been really clear that they have been working non-stop to put together a package that will resolve the situation. We also know, as Kevin said, that some bids have been submitted formally to the Treasury, and we should find out more tomorrow. Labour is demanding a comprehensive package by tomorrow morning as well. But I think it, you know, even though it doesn't affect a lot of people, a lot of your everyday man and women on the street, when you've got ministers going to Davos, doing these Treasury Connect public Q&A sessions with business leaders saying the UK is the world's next AI superpower. This is the key to growth. This is how we're going to reverse the really awful situation with public finances. It's really important they get this right.